This is Claire. She's 67. She's a retired teacher. And last year she lost her husband. Recently, she got online and she went looking for someone. And she found someone. She's happy now, she found a nice man online, and this nice man was great. He said the nicest things. He said that, well, first of all, he cared about her. He showed that he had interest in her by talking about things that she liked. He talked about her family, her friends, her activities, her favorite foods. You know, he said that she deserved to be loved. And rather quickly, he said that he had fallen in love with her. So she starts smiling again. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was appreciated and she was loved. And then an emergency happened. Something happened that he needed some money. So he asked her something. Can I ask you something? I need some help. I need just a little bit of money. Can you send a few $1,000s? And pretty soon that couple $1,000s turned into more. And well, she gave it to him. She ended up giving him $42,000. And it was all, he said that he would give her back the money after his money cleared the bank. It was just being held up for some reason. So it was worth it because it was someone that she cared about and that had made her feel good. And she was going to get her money back, right? No, that wasn't the case. She figured out towards the end that she wasn't getting her money back and she needed some help. So she started to ask someone for help. And the first person she asked is her daughter. It wasn't a great experience. Her daughter responded, "How could you be so stupid?" This brought shame to her. This, instead of comfort that you would normally expect to receive by someone, you get shame back. And this made her shut down. She didn't want to tell anyone else, so she didn't tell anyone else. She didn't tell the law enforcement. She didn't report it. She just kept it to herself and she blamed herself. And this is typical. This is normal. We don't want to share our bad experiences with the world. We want to hide it, especially if the people that we love and care about are calling us stupid or fools. And as we're fools, some would think that you gave away that money just, you were conned and you gave that money away. So that's your fault. But it's in the US, this is fraud. It is intentional deception, and that is fraud. That is illegal, and you can't do that. So we need to change that mindset that once you give away your money, it's gone. It is a crime. We shouldn't blame that victim. So FTC and the FBI have been monitoring romance scams for a long time. About 20 years of reports is what we have. And the last one that specifically focused on romance scams was in 2022, where it says that $1.3 billion were lost just to romance scams. Yeah, that's great. Well, it's not really a lot, but they also said that only between 2 and 6.7% were reported. So if we extrapolate that number, we come up with $22 to $55 billion each year are lost to the romance scam. This has been rising by about 10, 20% each year. So this number is higher. My guess is somewhere around 60 or $70 billion lost this year to romance scams, with more expecting to grow as our population becomes older and has more money. Let's move on. So this is where my research begins. I wanted to I wanted to see what they lost, what they needed, and what they were going to do next. So I put together a survey and I asked victims on Facebook, because Facebook is where you get a lot of victims. People looking for attention, people wanting to talk to other people. So Facebook was a place, and what I wanted to gather is I wanted to see who was being victimized. I wanted to see the status of that, what they lost, and how they were being victimized, so financially, emotionally, and what the ramifications of that victimization was. And I already knew that these people like to keep things private, so hopefully they'll talk to me, but maybe not. So I put out 170,000 ads on Facebook, and I got almost 8,000 people to click on my ad and come to my website and say, yes, I'll read your long IRB statement that says this is informed consent. So most of them shut down after that because that was crazy. And what I got left was about 500 responses. And out of those 500, I got 366 good responses, complete responses. Okay, so who were my victims? My victims were older individuals, 85 and older. The largest group was between 65 and 74. Females, 82% were females. Widowed or divorced, 70% were widowed. They're looking for love. They are older. Husbands die at a younger age than the women do. So we're going to have a lot more women in this category. And this was actually surprising. 81% were white. Now, this is great because it tells us all about the characteristics of victims, or maybe not. Maybe it just tells us who responded to the ads or who was willing to open themselves up to an ad. Because remember, most victims don't like to share who they are. So it was great that they did share, and this is who shared. This was a big number. Almost 61% did not tell anyone. 61% kept it quiet. So I was very happy that out of those individuals, they wanted to talk to me. And this also suggests that this number should be a little bit higher, because if they're trying to keep this private, they're not going to even talk to me. So, but out of my numbers, 61% didn't share anything. They didn't talk to police, they didn't talk to their friends, they didn't talk to their family. It was just kept quiet, living in silence. So who did they tell? Most told their family and their friends. That should be expected. A smaller group talked to the local police, and then the FBI and the FTC. Look at these numbers, FBI and FTC, 5.2 and 3.3%. This kind of matches the FTC numbers as well that were reported. So that kind of gives me some validation that, we're working from the same data here. So that's great. And then we have this whole group of other people that they also talk to. Social services is at 1%, adult protective services at 0.6%. Out of all these contact types, which does the victim believe is the most helpful? To help identify how helpful contacts were perceived to be, respondents used a 4-point scale from 1, not helpful, to 4, extremely helpful. Therapist and social services scored the highest, right around 3%. Friends and family came in a bit lower with between 2.2 and 2.3. Law enforcement, they were the lowest by far. Local police averaged 1.7 and the FBI just 1.3. Some victims are reaching out to others outside of their family and friends, but what they get back is often falling short of what they expect. And in some cases, it's just downright disappointing. At this point in the analysis, I had a thought. Could that first call to the friend or family stop further reporting? To explore this question, I tested whether relying on informal support like family and friends was related to whether the victim ever reported the scam formally. The result was statistically significant. Victims who turned to informal support were much less likely to ever report to a formal source, like law enforcement or a federal agency. In other words, the first conversation really matters, and all too often, that's where the reporting journey ends. Now, let's take a look at some emotional psychological consequences. The impact went far beyond embarrassment. More than half of those who shared their story with their family or friends were shamed by them. Around 12% sought counseling, and about 7% lost legal control of their finances. They were placed under guardianship. Nearly 16% experienced suicidal thoughts. Now, I want to focus your attention on that guardianship number. It's small, but I feel it's pretty meaningful. With guardianship, a court decides that a victim is unable to manage their own finances. I see this as the ultimate protection for victims, and it happened to 1 out of every 14 victims in my study. Now let's take a little bit closer look at those suicidal ideations. I wanted to see if there was a correlation between the money lost and suicidal ideations. I plugged in the numbers as you can see in this chart. As the amount lost increases, the percent of victims experiencing suicidal ideation increases as well, forming a positive relationship. I want to emphasize that this apparent correlation was found to be not statistically significant, likely due to the small expected counts in the higher loss brackets. Still, the pattern is striking and important to consider for future research. At this point, I think I made it clear that romance scams are more than financial crimes. They're emotional betrayals that hijack trust and isolate victims. And they leave psychological wounds that few institutions are designed to treat. Victims in this survey said that yes, the financial loss hurt, but in many cases, the emotional harm was more damaging. So why don't victims report? This is not something new. We generally don't like to admit our vulnerabilities. Research of other crimes suggests that the primary motivations for not sharing are shame, fear of judgment, dismissive and blaming reactions from trusted people, a belief that nothing will happen, money will not return, justice will not be served, not knowing where to report, and a desire to put it in the past. As a result of this study, I want to add 2 things to that list. First of all, there's a do-it-yourself mindset that exists. And second, that family and friends join in to help with that do-it-yourself approach. But I also want to point out that moving on from a threat is not always the best solution if vulnerabilities are not mitigated. That can leave the door open for future attacks. Here's one final number for you. Of the victims in this study, almost 60% were victimized more than one time. The most critical moment for a victim is when they decide to tell someone and who they decide to tell. One path could lead to help, and the other path leads to silence. Even if they tell their family and friends, it could still lead to silence. Right now, most are walking that path of silence. So, what if we built something different? Imagine a centralized support service where victims could get real time help, like poison control or the suicide hotline, but for scams. A trusted voice, not just to collect reports, but to offer comfort, guidance, and recovery planning. A frontline defense with technical depth, where trained professionals understand scam playbooks, deception tactics, and AI enhanced manipulation. This isn't just about emotional recovery. It's about identifying the threats, preserving evidence, and protecting the next potential victim. The romance scam is a financial crime, but it has human impact, and there's more work to be done. Thank you. I'd love to hear your questions, your thoughts, and your ideas. This isn't the end of the story, it's a place to begin.